KFUG 101.1 FM online, kfugradio.org. 2 minutes past 11 in the morning on a rainy Friday, and I'm joined live in the studio, Mr. Gerry Hemmingsen, District 4 Supervisor for the County of Del Norte. How you doing, Jerry?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. It's a great day to be inside on the radio, I guess.
I wish our fireplace worked. We could have a fireside chat. That's kind of
that'd be good.
So I was wondering... So you're closing in on 12 years on the Board of Supervisors, right?
I am, yes.
And I was wondering, why is it we'd never had you on KFUG before? And because you kind of run unopposed ordinarily, right?
I have run unopposed. My last two elections, I ran unopposed. And I guess you've never had me on KFUG because I've never been invited.
Oh, okay, you got me there. That's absolutely right. Well, you know, it's the squeaky wheel kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I have no issue with having an interview or being on the radio.
Well, let's talk about the time, your tenure on the Board of Supervisors, if we can, because
sure.
you've been. So you come on. Who else was on that original board when you came in? We had
Leslie McNamer.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Martha McClure. David Finnegan, and Mike Sullivan, and I were elected the same year. Mm-hmm. So, and myself and Mike Sullivan.
Wow, so there's been a lot of change then around.
There's been a lot of change here recently. Mm-hmm. You know, I went from being a new guy. Mike and I were the new guys on the block. The first year I was there, to being the senior member mm-hmm. of the board. So that's quite a transition. It's a little different dynamic, and of course the board at times, not often, but we can get polarized on some issues. That's what seems to hit the airwaves or the newspaper.
Yeah.
Is that there's contention amongst the board and we can't get along, which is mostly not true. I mean, I think most of the votes that we have, I would say 95+% are 5-0 votes, occasionally a 4-1 vote in there, and then sometimes 3-2. But for the most part, things are moving along. The county's doing its business.
I want to ask, you mentioned an interesting thing, and I at KFUG here, I'm guilty of this too. When some controversy happens, then I kind of get excited and I go, all right, let's get people on the radio, let's talk about it. But the really, like, the nuts and bolts of being a supervisor, it seems, in county government is, you don't... things progress, and you said, like, the work of the county is getting done. Can you give us like an example of whether it's this board or previous boards when the board is really pulled together on an important issue, or do they on almost all important issues? You're saying 95% of the time it's a overwhelming majority, right?
I think, and I'm trying to pick a specific thing, but I think we've always pulled together when the issue of the airport has come about and what we needed to do out there to make sure that we continue commercial air service. The issues that I've worked on, access to our public lands, the Forest Service, things like that, mm-hmm. things that I think the next generation and generations beyond that need to have that access, to our public lands. And so I think we've always come together when there's been an issue of keeping those lands open or accessible to the public. The harbor has been a thing that I think, or an issue that I think the board has always been behind. It's kind of a gem here in the county, and we'd like to see that continue on. So I think we've always been able to get behind them in whatever way we can help. We don't have a lot of resources, so it's not like we can say, well, we'll just give them X number of dollars and that'll fix them, because we just don't have that to give. But resources, our advocate that we use in Washington D.C., we've helped with that, and we've allowed them to use that advocate for dredging and for other issues in the harbor. So there are a lot of things that I think we've we've come together on and as a board and really pushed for and kept moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be other things I'll come up with as they come forward in my brain.
Okay, that's fine.
Get past that slick spot.
So how is the harbor? You've got a boat down there, right?
I do. I have a 60-foot commercial fishing boat. We shrimp with it, which is what we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
We fish for Dungeness crab, and we also have a bottom trawl permit that we fish for Dover sole and Petrale sole and sablefish, those types of things is what we target. So we do that. Not as much in the bottom trawl fishing as we do in shrimp and crab, but we keep busy. We fish year round. Have a skipper and a crew, and they keep plenty busy.
How's the harbor then as a boat owner, as a fisherman? How's the harbor as far as its infrastructure now and responsiveness to your needs?
Well, the harbor is absolutely beautiful, other than the fact that there's a whole bunch of empty slips. You know, the harbor wasn't as pretty before the rebuilding of it, but there was certainly a lot more boats on it. It was prettier to me than it is to be, whatever it is, 25% full. I don't even know what the numbers are, but I know that there's certainly a lot more vacant spaces than there are full spaces. And we'd like to, I would certainly like to see that change. Times have changed a little bit. We lost a lot of boats in the tsunami, and a lot of those people just didn't come back. They didn't get back into the industry. It's harder to be in the industry. It's more expensive to be in the industry. It's more regulated. There's a lot of things that work against you. Just business in general in California, with regulation is tough to be in business in California.
And especially with a business that is impacted so much by environmental regulations. And it's one thing to be a retail place. It's another thing to go out in the ocean and catch fish.
Yeah.
Wow. That's okay. So let's talk campaign. So this is in effect, since although we're closing in on 12 years on the board, this is really only your second campaign.
It's only my second campaign, and I admit I'm not very good at it.
How so? How aren't you good at campaign?
Well, when you go out, door knocking is a very important component of campaigning. I think continuing to keep your name out there, and I'm not much of a self-promoter. So it's difficult for me. My campaign people keep telling me you need to tell people what you're doing, and I'm more of a just get it done type of a guy rather than this is what I did, look at me kind of a person. But I'm not very good at door knocking because I end up spending too much time with people talking to them, so I don't get very many doors knocked on.
But the ones that you knock on feel very special, don't they?
Oh, they're all special. I enjoy it immensely. It just takes a lot of time. It takes a huge amount of time, and having businesses like I do, the retail store that I have, and the fishing boat, and being a supervisor, and then campaigning on top of it. It's a difficult task to do. I don't have many extra moments in the day.
Do you get a feel for how the campaign's going though thus far? I mean, you've got what? You've got 3 people running against you?
I do have 3 people running against me. When I do knock on doors, I get a good response. I think I've got a good base. I think for the most part, people are extremely receptive and supportive of my campaign and what I've been doing. So I feel good about it in that sense, and I don't like to see a lot of the negative stuff that seems to be coming out. And I can sit here and argue, most of the day about all the negative stuff that comes out that is not actually factual, but that's not very productive. So I like to stay focused on the positive part of it.
What are your talking points then? When you knock on a door and you introduce yourself, what do you say to folks to get them to support you?
Well, I don't generally initiate something, like to say, I've been doing this, I've been doing that. I generally kind of wait to see what what people ask about, and a lot of the questions they ask about are the homeless situation. Last chance grade is is probably number 1 or 2 on everybody's list, and along with the homeless. I don't think anybody that I've talked to hasn't said something about the homeless problem, and then that's something that we need to do with it. And I certainly agree. We have a huge issue with the homeless problem. As a matter of fact, I meet with Senator McGuire tomorrow on that very issue. So we're trying to make progress. I just don't feel like there's one solution.
Yeah.
Because there's the dynamics of homelessness. There are people who have substance abuse issues. That's going to take one solution. There are people with mental illness. That's going to take, I think, a different, maybe similar but different solution. And there are some with both of those issues. And there are some people that are just down and out and need a hand up. And that's certainly a simpler fix, because I think that's the kind of thing that we can really work on. And then there's a faction of the homeless community that wants to be homeless.
Yeah.
They want to be left alone. They don't want anybody bothering them.
I know a lot of people out there might go, well, that's not true, but no, it is. I've lived in the Bay Area for a lot of years, so face to face with homeless people, and knew them, many of them, first name. You see them every day, you talk to them, and a lot of them were just, that's the lifestyle. They don't want to have jobs and live indoors. They want to be free for whatever it is they. But you're absolutely. I think. It's not, homelessness just isn't one problem. It is a myriad set of problems that need to. How do you address all those different problems?
Well, that's a good question, because I haven't found.
Nobody.
If anybody has found that solution, I would be the first one on the bandwagon saying this is what we need to do. There have been successes in Utah, and we're certainly looking at some of those. We were awarded, or supposedly awarded, a grant for $75,000 that we applied for, to do a study to figure out where, what direction, what do we need to do? Do we need to build some housing, which is what the No Place Like Home funds are for, or is to build a facility, to get that started. And
you said supposedly gotten funds for a study. Did we get funds for this?
We got awarded the contract, or the funds, not the contract, but the funds, but they haven't supplied us with those funds yet, and there was a hold, and I don't exactly remember the reasoning for the hold, and we're going to have that discussion tomorrow on where those funds are.
Okay.
We think they're coming, and we've been assured that they're coming, but until those funds are here, we can't do anything with it.
Now, and this was, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is just for a study?
This is for a study. Catholic Charities is actually going to be on part of the meeting tomorrow. They'll be on a conference call, but they'll be talking with us. And we've discussed this with them before. They have a project in Sonoma County that's been what they say is very successful. Excuse me. I don't know how they're measuring that success, or what exactly is going on there, but they've had very little or very few issues with the homeless, and have had some great positives come out of that. So we're looking at that. Is that a group that we would want to manage a facility if we were to put a facility in here? If that's what it comes to, if that's what the study shows, how big of a facility, all those types of things will be discussed. But that's not going to be the answer. It's
going to help you define the question, I guess, basically.
Yeah. Well, it's a cause and effect type thing. We continually address the effects. So and that's just a money kind of thing. As long as we keep throwing money at it, we can address those effects. So what we need to do is get down to the cause, the root cause. And I'm not sure I can answer that question. And if somebody can, I'm certainly open. My door's open. My phone's available. Give me a call.
We'd like to know.
We'd like to know. I've been discussing with True North people, Michael Thornton. They think they've got some ideas, and we're certainly going to meet with them and find out what they've got to say.
Well, a study would be a great thing to do, because as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, the interaction of larger Del Norte County with the homeless population, it's almost like a community service sort of thing in that, when we do the counts, when you go out and find out how many people are living in the bushes and things like that, it's almost like Roger was doing Take a Bite Out of Blight or something. It isn't funded, it isn't coherent, it doesn't have, you're not out looking for answers. Has there ever been any kind of attempt to really understand the uniqueness of the homeless problem in Del Norte County?
Well, I think, there's been a couple of times I know that that they've gone out and tried to get a count and the reasoning and all that. And there's a survey out there, and I don't know how big that is or if, how many people they reached. But there is some information out there. They're trying to identify people, that are going through the system as homeless, and try to identify their needs so that we can address those needs. Now, we have availability of limited resources and services for the homeless, but we tried to do everything we can to support that, and we will continue to do that, at least from my point of view. But it's still just treating the effects. It's not getting down to the cause. It's not getting to what is it that these people need, either to get off of substance abuse or to deal with their mental health issues, or to give them a hand up, and get them a job if that's what they want to do, if they want to get out of that. And then what do you do with those people that want to? And I don't know if that's a large portion of the homeless population. If they want to be homeless, is that a large portion, a small portion, a fraction of a fraction, or what it is? But I know there are some people out there that want to live that lifestyle, and I don't know that it's a large portion. I think substance abuse and mental health issues probably are the majority of the homeless, and in that regard, I think those people that are homeless and have families need to be they need to be prioritized in getting help and getting out of that situation, as well as our veterans. We need to focus on those people that have the need, and I think families are going to be the ones that have the need, but we also need to help those veterans, the ones that served us. We need to give back and serve them. And
our local, what is he, the commandant of the VFW? Is it Jerry Johnson? Jerry... I'm so sorry.
Aaron Goodwin.
Oh, that's a new name.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
No, that's not. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I go back now. I forgot. We just hired him as the as child support services, or
the local VFW is very much involved in trying to understand homelessness.
Right. And you could be right with the names.
I wish I knew.
I'm a little bit behind that. I think we just had a kind of a change in there, and I think maybe might even be two people that are doing that now over at the veterans.
I know from living on Elk Valley Road that homelessness is a big deal and seems to be getting worse, and that meth plays a big part of it. You can just sit here and look out this window all day long and see what goes up and down the street and listen to them talking to themselves. It seems that meth has sort of fallen off the map of our concerns recently. And is that true? Is that just a misconception on my part?
Now it's the opioid epidemic, which we're engaged in now. The county has just joined a lawsuit against the manufacturers of those products with others, other counties.
Oh, that's amazing! Like a class action suit about
pretty big deal.
Wow,
about the impacts of the opioid epidemic. Just because we have more prescriptions for opioids than we do people.
Wow,
in Del Norte County, so. I haven't seen that actually written down any place, but I've heard that said several times. And other counties have the same issue. So, I think there is probably some overprescribing, but maybe some of it is unintentional because the information's not passed from one doctor to the other. If the people receiving the prescriptions are getting it from more than one doctor, I don't know what's going on there, but I know it's an issue. And having had both my knees replaced, I did use opioids, and I'm glad that they were available. I was happy to get off of them. I personally, I didn't feel the need that I wanted to stay on them.
I've heard that is one of the most painful things you can do is knee replacement.
Yeah, and I had them both done within about 7 weeks of each other. So,
man.
So it was an experience, and I gotta give kudos to my wife. She was my nursemaid, and I probably wasn't a very good patient, but she was certainly an excellent nurse.
How long have you guys been married now?
Took great care. 44 years.
Oh, congratulations.
We'll be married 45 years the end of next month.
Oh, right on. That's fantastic. So. I wanted to compliment you on your daughter too. Who I really haven't spoken to since I think my dad and I did pictures of her wedding. Right? It's Hillary, right?
Hillary.
Yeah, she was. She said something at the forum to me, and I was busy not being able to get the live remote to work, so I didn't talk to her as much. But while I was watching these crazy on Ustream, the crazy meetings from this week, the last Board of Supervisors meeting, and then the city council, not in that order. I watched her come up and talk to them about the park at Brother Jonathan Point there, and she was so helpful. I wanted to compliment you on raising Hillary because she's like, and if you guys need help finding the equipment, I've already done some research. I can help you here. And it was coming and asking for the city to do something and that will involve money and outlay. She just did it in such a nice way. You really wanted to help her, so I hope she's able to do that.
I'm really proud of her. She was I guess she still is a school teacher, although she's taken time off to raise my grandkids, which I'm very glad that she is.
That's cool, yeah.
They're the reasons, or one of the largest reasons that I have for being a supervisor are because my grandkids and my kids. I'm proud of both of our biological kids. We've also had 2 nieces and a nephew that their parents were killed, and they lived with us for a number of years before my daughter was born, before Hillary was born, they moved in. So we went from a household of having one child to a household of having 5 children. So, and it's been a great experience. They all are doing well. 2 of them live in Delmark County also. One of them lives up in Coos Bay. And then, of course, my son works for me at Moore John, and my daughter does a lot throughout the community. She runs the program at the library for the young kids, and that's why she's so interested in Brother Jonathan Park, is because she takes the kids they take the kids to the park after the library meeting, and it's much easier to keep track of the kids.
That's what she said, yeah.
Keep track of the kids at the Brother Jonathan playground rather than Kids Town, because there's too many places for kids to be where you can't see them.
Yeah, exactly.
They get out of vision, which is just not acceptable in this day and age. Back in the day when I was here, you'd leave in the morning on the weekend, and your folks would hopefully see you at the end of the day before it got dark.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a little different. It's a different day, and it's certainly understandable. But she does a great community service throughout Delmark County, and she's really interested in kids and early education, as well as myself. The 3 Read 23 program, the Children's Bill of Rights, all these things that we do at the board level that we do support wholly, which we have done. You asked about things that we support from the board as a whole, and we've always supported from the very beginning. David Finnegan, I know, was a big proponent of all this stuff, and we've pushed that forward. With a lot of effort. So.
Yeah, that's true. It seems that the county really cares about the kids in the county. That's interesting.
And we should, I think.
So you've talked about, I'm going to do it. I was going to try to hold off on these sort of bigger things, but you talked about your kids, your grandkids being one reason why, you want to run and you want to stay on the Board of Supervisors. Looking ahead into the future, what kind of Delmark County would you like to leave for your children and grandchildren?
Well, we've got such natural beauty, within the county. We don't want to see much change there, but we also want to see economic survival. So I think a balance. We'd like to see a balance between those two things, where we have sustainable resources being utilized to keep the economic base. Although that's pretty tough. Fishing, the timber industry has changed considerably since my younger days. So that's a different dynamic. But I think there's still opportunities with the issues that we've had with forest fires and with tree mortality and the things, the management of the forests. I think we can do a better job. I'd like to leave this county, with a better management focus. I've been involved with the Smith River National Recreation Area Collaborative. Grant Werschel and I co-chair that, and that has been a great tool. The Forest Service has been very receptive, and we've got a couple of projects. We've got one project that we've got the okay on and signed off on, and they're working on getting that going. Our next project is Kanopke Creek. The Kanopke Creek project, so we're working on that. That'll be coming out shortly, I hope, where we have a timber stand improvement, fuels reductions, things that we can really that will really help the forest in the long run. They're very small areas, so it's not a huge impact, but it's a start, and we need to continue on with that. I'm a fan of maybe getting some biofuels going. I understand that's going to have to be subsidized, but I think if we utilize some money that would normally be used for fire suppression or firefighting, and use those dollars to subsidize maybe biofuels.
Like a generation plant here?
Yeah, some sort of a generation plant, or
it could be BlackBerry powered, for crying out loud.
Exactly. I mean, we've got a lot of those. Yeah. So if these are just conceptual things. A lot of people have come in and tried that, and it hasn't worked. The transportation is always the big issue with getting it out of the forest. But we got to reduce those fuels so that we don't have the fires, and then we end up with bug infestations. We've always had a pretty resilient forest, and haven't had those fires, like we had here in the past, not too long ago, where we had 30,000 acres burn up. And I was trying to think back. Of course, when I was a kid, I probably didn't pay that much attention, but I just don't remember 30,000 acres burning in Del Norte County.
Wow.
And here we had this 30,000 acre fire, and then after that, we have these bug infestations that come in. And we've never had bugs here. We've always had a pretty resilient forest. So that part of the equation is not a good thing. So I think we need to stay on top of that. I'd like to see the economic base, stay. Tourism is growing by leaps and bounds. Unfortunately, we're limited, I think, on some of our tourist opportunities because of the weather that we have and the time of year. We're narrowed down to probably 3 or 4 months out of the year that we're really going to get that influx of tourists. So, what do you do for the other 8 months out of the year, 8 or 9 months out of the year? So, so we need to have something that is maybe something that's a little more beneficial to employees. A lot of times these tourist jobs are minimum wage jobs, so they're not real high paying or high skilled jobs. Vocational education has always been something that I think we need to play a bigger part in this community. When I was growing up, there seemed to be a lot of vocational opportunities, education-wise, within College of the Redwoods and at the high school level. Within the high school, I think there are still some valuable things going on there. But I think we've got away from it a little more. maybe at the community college level, and I think we need to see more of that. Not everybody is suited to go to college and go on to higher education, even though in this day and age, I think it's a necessity to have the education, your reading skills and your math skills. Those are things that you're going to need in any business or any activity. I think that you want to do well in. I think you need to have those things.
What you're talking about lends itself to another kind of bigger question about that. We've talked about the future. I guess it never occurred to me until this last the youth summit forum that you and Chris Howard attended, when you said, born and raised in Delaware County. That's amazing to me. I love meeting somebody who was born and raised here, because there's so few that you run into on a daily basis. How has the county changed over the course of your life? What's good? What's bad? I mean, has it stayed basically the same? I know that the resource economy has fallen away, and is it still in the process of falling away? But other big changes?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't really put a lot of thought on that. Of course, things are always changing and evolving. I guess there wasn't. There wasn't a lot of worry about finding a job or having work available, because you could go to work in the fishing industry, and I'm talking at this point about unskilled labor and
like just fresh out of school, right?
Yeah, just either
or
fresh
even
out
still
of school,
in school.
Yeah, in school or fresh out of school, but. The fishing industry you could get into. You could go to work in the woods. It was a little more dangerous, and you probably had to be a little bit older. And then you could go to work in any of a number of mills that were around. It just seemed to be that things moved a little bit easier. I mean, it wasn't a lot of money. You never had a lot of money, and nothing ever paid very well. If you can go back to the days where you're making 25 cents an hour or something like that, it wasn't the greatest pay, but it seemed like the money went a little bit farther.
Yeah, because back then that's a gallon of gas, right?
Well, yeah, a gallon and a half of gas, probably.
Wow.
So anyway, $20 would go a long ways. Yeah. Back then. Now $20 won't buy you lunch most of the time.
Do you have? I mean, are there the same? Excuse me, the same concerns as far as? Of course, probably there wasn't as much of a homeless issue.
Yeah, that's really strange, because I don't remember a homeless issue. Although I don't know if it would be as noticeable back then. But I'm sure there wasn't as many homeless people as there are now. I mean, it's a visible difference in the homeless population, where you see homeless camps and they at times become visible because they get so large. Which that was not something that I remember at all growing up. Is the homeless situation. Certainly technology has changed a lot, and has changed, I think, the face of Delaware County.
There's a lot being made about the connectivity, about getting the digital connect with the rest of the world, and I kind of sit around and I go, all right, but I don't notice any difference in in my charter service. What's it mean to the county to have like the redundancy and everything that everybody's always talking about?
We worked on that. There's another issue that the board supported wholly.
Yeah.
I mean, we were, and as you keep talking, I'm sure we'll keep coming up with more things that the board was focused on. That Redwood Coast Connect. We were with them. John Irwin, I think his name was, did some great stuff with broadband, and we did end up getting redundancy. So we have that to the east. But we don't have it to the south, and we don't have the internet capabilities in Klamath that we should.
Yeah.
And so there's these they call it the last mile. There's we have the trunk line and it comes into Crescent City, and most of us have, if you're with Charter, you have great internet service, and it works pretty well, at least mine does. Pretty happy with that. And even, Frontier has a service a little slower, but still works well. I'm not trying to put one over the other, but we do have pretty good service in Crescent City area or Del Norte County, in the popular or the more popularized areas. So that's really good. But it's that last mile. It's getting it out to on the fringes to even the cell service. Getting the cell service out that last mile. Those are things that we're working on, and we should continue to work on. I know Connie Stewart real well. She's with that Redwood Coast Connect. She's asked me if I would like to be the liaison in that group to the board, and I've indicated that I would. David Finnegan used to be, and since David left, we have had nobody fill that slot. So,
wow. And
I didn't realize we had an open slot. So I was just talking to her a month or so ago about that. So working on that, to get that, so we can continue pushing out to get to that last mile where we can get service to those people that are underserved, not served and underserved. We've had several discussions on this at our NORTEC. I'm also part of. I'm the county's representative to NORTEC, which is the Northern Rural Training and Employment Consortium, and they take in 11 northern counties, workforce type things, and so we have presentations on this type of thing all the time, and it usually sparks my brain to get something going. And so they've been working on this last mile in the areas east of us, and so it's a different group. And on the coast, it's the Redwood Coast Connect. So there's a little disconnect in the connect. So trying to work on that a little bit, but they work well together.
Is that something, as a member of that you can bridge, coming from the Board of Supervisors? You can help sort of connect the two.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope we can get something going on that. It's an important thing. Those are the types of things that are ever changing. When I was growing up, we had 2 channels on the TV,
and they both went off at night.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, you didn't get them all. You didn't get them all day long, and they didn't come in very well normally. And I can remember my father being up on the roof adjusting the antenna, and somebody down hollering at him, telling him if it was better or worse. And normally it was never good, but it could be better. So, but those are things that have changed. I think there was a lot more, just the basic things. A lot more walking to school type of things. Not that I walked 5 miles to school uphill both ways or anything like that, but we did generally walk to school, and it was a couple of miles away. You didn't get a ride from your parents, and it seems to be that there's a lot more of that. There's a lot more congestion, I think, at schools. We're having an issue at Redwood School, which is in my district, with traffic circulation and no parking and things like that. So those are things that I'm actively working on, trying to get some focus on those types of things that that I can help with. We don't have any resources, but we have I can help informational wise or contact wise, and anything I can do to help that we can get that done. Or planning, I had Jeff Daniels from the road department. We met with Jeff Napier and Jeff Harris out at Redwood School, and we talked about, what could we do? Where do we need to go with that? So we're looking. I'm hoping to be part of looking for maybe some land acquisition adjacent to the school so they can end up with more.
There's just that one side, right?
Well, there is. There's an area to the south. But
to the south, is there an area to the south right there? I mean, because it's like the north side, like toward the river. That's right before it drops down the hill. You've got that.
There is, and we've had some discussions with that. It would be better to go to the south. There's kind of an open lot there. There are some residences, that set back, but that front portion, maybe back 100 feet or so, if they could take a couple of acres in there, if we could get a
like back toward the Grange.
Yeah. So if we can get that way, the other area is being logged right now, so that's possibly an opportunity to go that way. But with it being wooded like that, certainly a lot more issue to get the stumps out and all of that. So that can be pretty costly. The going to the south would not take much to get that leveled out and gravelled in and fenced off. So that's the direction that I hope we're going. If anybody from the school district's listening,
that makes the most sense. Yeah, and because I avoid Fort Dick if it's close to after school time and school getting out. No, there's just no getting through.
Well, and I live right across from Pine Grove School. So if I try to go to work at 10 minutes to 8, that's pretty difficult. I can go. I can go at 7:30 and not have an issue at all, or I can go at 8:05 and not have an issue at all. But there's 20 minutes or a half an hour in there where it's just not convenient. It's not that it's not doable, and I do it all the time, and then I got to remember, well, is this an early out day? Can I go home to do this?
And you go, my kids are grown. Why do I have to remember this now?
so that there's a lot of, and my whole point was the difference between access, I guess, by walking to school and the transportation and people, grandparents and parents picking their kids up creates quite a little bit of congestion and not using the bus as much as maybe they should, type of thing. So
what's interesting to me about all of that, and I know that there might be folks who are listening or they want more controversy. We can talk about SB 54, things like that, and the dysfunction of the board currently, all of that stuff. But what you're talking about with Redwood, that's where the rubber meets the road when it comes to local politics. It's improving people's quality of lives.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What other, another one that's been an issue for decades, and I'm sure, people, you probably are sick of hearing about it, talking about it, thinking about it, tired of it being an issue. Last chance grade.
Yeah, that's a good one because, if you go back and look at the history of it, it's a little more understandable because when I came on the board, Caltrans really had no... They weren't looking at an alternate route. They had already done their cost analysis and valuation of last chance grade, and so in 2000.
So did it just make sense to them at the time just to keep shoring it up?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what their cost evaluation did, and David Finnegan, I think, sat on that committee, and he was the only one that was opposed to them staying on the same alignment that there are now.
Wow.
And they just said, well, it just doesn't make sense to put a road inland because it would cost this much money, and they thought it would only cost X number of dollars to keep it open. Well, I'm guessing at these dates, but I'm going to say in about 2012, the light bulb went off, and they said, you know what? This isn't working.
Do you have any idea why? Why the light bulb went off?
Well, I just think they were starting to put so much money. They'd put these walls in, and they started failing.
Yeah, right away. Yeah.
So as they would put a wall in, and they would expect it to last maybe for 10 years or maybe 5 years, and it would only last 2 or 1, and they would see a failure. And they did a lot of engineering and a lot of studying, and they thought they could get these walls on, which they're still doing and which they're still putting in, which are still helpful. I think they're putting $35 million into it this year.
Wow.
And that's not including the emergency things that they have to do. These are planned programs of reinforcing the wall and those types of things, and they'll be working there all summer long probably again, and we'll be down to one lane. Thankfully, we'll be down to at least one lane.
There'll still be one lane there. Right?
And I got to give Caltrans kudos for keeping the road open. They man it 24 hours a day. There's somebody there. They've put in electronic monitoring areas where if there's a failure or the road moves, I think 6 inches or something like that, alarms and bells and whistles go off, and they're able to get up there and find out what the issue is. They've got cameras. And they've made the commitment to keep that road open. And economically, it would be totally devastating to this community if that was to go down. We would, it would change a lot, where you wouldn't be able to get to Klamath, for days.
Yeah, exactly. And how long you drive out, and
that would be a real.
So what do you say to folks? I'm sorry again to interrupt. What do you say to folks who decry how long this is going to take? And when you first hear that, what was it, 2029 or 2030? Something I forget what that first that seems so far in the future, and you go, wow, how is it going to hang on that long? What is wrong with this process? Yeah. How do you address constituents who come to you with that?
Well, and they do come to me with that, and it's a process. There's the environmental process that they have to go through. We don't want to end up with the same thing that we've got, on the ocean side of the mountain as we do on the inland side of the mountain. So that's why these studies have to occur. And I get that. Whoa, another study. That's just what we need. Blah, blah, blah. We need another study, like we need a hole in the head. And I don't disagree, except to the point where I don't want to see the same thing happen. I don't want to see us have slides. It's not any worse than having your car careen 300 feet down a bank than it is for 300 feet of material to fall down on top of you.
Yeah.
So there's I guess a fine line in there. We got $5 million, or Caltrans got $5 million to do geotechnical studies, which they're starting here shortly.
And they're double tracking some of the studies too.
They're parallel tracking a lot of this stuff. They've also got $5 million to start the environmental consulting process, so they can get in there and find out what they need to do. So those two things are going to dovetail together, and so then once the geotechnical studies are done and the preliminary environmental stuff is done, then we can get right onto the environmental work that has to be done. And then you'll hear the guys say, oh, well, we can just get all that environmental stuff exempted. And that sounds like a good idea. And, I guess there's a possibility that you could, but what are you getting exempted from? Without doing a study, you're not going to know what you're getting exempted from. They're not just going to give you a blank, oh, well, you're just exempted from what? All the Endangered Species Act? It's not going to happen. You're going to get exempted from what? From so without knowing what you're going to get exempted from, that's a difficult road, and that doesn't exempt you from lawsuits.
Yeah, exactly.
So you get a third-party lawsuit, which we currently have on 199, 197 project, which was a project that I worked on, since I started, since I was started as a supervisor in 2007, and we went through the entire process, and we found out what Caltrans wasn't doing, what they were doing, kept the pressure on them until we finally got the study reports done, and where we could get to the point of finding out what we needed to do to fix that road. And once we got there, we got approval from the commission. We funded the project. We had it ready to go. We let the contract.
It was like shovel ready, basically.
The contract was let, and the contractor had already started the work. And the judge came in with an injunction and said, "Oh, wait a minute, you can't do this."
And so that was what? That was Friends? Was it Friends of Del Norte?
Friends of Del Norte were involved. I think EPIC is involved. I don't know if the Center for Biological Diversity was involved, but
let me say. Okay, so first blush, you're going to make it easier for bigger trucks to drive down 199, 197 North Bank Road. There, it's right by where we get our water. my initial reaction was, no, I don't want that to happen. I've heard facts since then that have made me sort of rethink that. So I'm a tree hugger here. Explain to me why this isn't as bad as I think it is.
Well, we all should be tree huggers. I don't. Although they grow very well around here, and so I don't think there's much concern about them not ever coming back, and we're never going to cut them all. We've got a lot of parks, and we've got a lot of areas that are never going to be harvested. But yeah, I agree.
See, now
there are areas that we need to preserve, but this this whole misconception that these trucks are heavier, faster, bigger. They're longer. Mm-hmm. The trucks are longer. Mm-hmm. They're a little longer, so they're industry standard now. That's what the industry. If you have something that's coming from the East Coast or something that's coming from far away, they usually are on industry standard trucks. That means they're a little bit longer. They can haul more of a load, not a heavier load, mm-hmm. but just more load. You may have, a lot of products that don't weigh as much, and so you can get more of them on there. So in reality, the thought should be there would be less truck traffic
because each truck would be able to carry more.
Truck could haul more. That's correct. So
that's the logic I've heard that's made me rethink it then. Yeah. But one of those trucks goes into the Smith. I mean, it happens. It's happened anyway. It happened with the fuel spill up there.
Exactly, and those are not the longer trucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to make the road safer, I mean, even for those trucks would be better, even though most of those accidents didn't happen in areas that they're going to fix. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I guess that's just part of living in the age that we live in, where we have to have fuel but I mean we need fuels and we need these things, and they're going to be carried over the roadways. We need to make the roads as safe as we can.
That also is another twist on the logic that I hadn't get. Of course, a safer road means fewer accidents. It means
for the most part, with the tourists, when you meet a 40-foot motorhome pulling a vehicle behind them and they're coming through there, we need to make it safer for them too. Mm-hmm. They're a little scary at times. They're usually people that are older, like myself, driving those rigs, and maybe their reactions time is not as good, and they're on a narrow road, and sometimes it's unfamiliar. And so if we can make those roads safer and we can attract more tourists to come here, because we do have transportation corridors are better. I think that's all a good thing. You get back to the changes. Transportation was a huge obstacle when I was growing up. I mean, you didn't just drive over to Medford and come back, in a few hours. Before the tunnel was put in, and not many people remember that, it was an excursion that you just going to Medford.
Yeah.
So it was a whole day. You left very early in the morning, and you ended up usually getting back very late.
Before the tunnel, where was the road? You just go over the mountain?
Well,
you go around it?
You can see. You went around, around the mountain, and there are areas where you can see where the old road used to be. You have to look pretty closely, but that straightened out a whole lot of the road when they put the tunnel in, and that was that they just had the 50-year anniversary of the tunnel being put in, and I remember being up there at the dedication.
Oh wow!
So I was probably 14 or 15 years old, 14 years old probably when I was up there for that dedication. But I remember the dedication up there. Senator Collier was up there for that. A lot of dignitaries, a lot of stuff going on up there. It was a big deal. That was a big deal. But that was the last big deal as far as transportation. I mean, and it's been over 50 years ago that we've had improvements on that road.
Good point. Yeah.
Those are big changes. Having that transportation corridor, a safe transportation corridor, is extremely important for this community to the east like that.
Okay, so we've talked past, we've talked future, we've talked some of the bigger things that are happening. There's a couple of things I want to get into, and it's about 4 minutes away from noon. Are you cool for sticking around for a little longer?
Whatever.
All right.
I'm good.
You're the one person on the Board of Supervisors. You've been there the longest now, and I was reading going on to sort of acquaint myself with your recent life on your Facebook page or on the campaign's Facebook page, and talking about you were out of town. You're at CSAC.
CSAC, yeah. It's
all of these extra things that you do, and I want to get into CSAC, but what are those things that you do that you get into after spending so much time on the Board of Supervisors, the other committees elsewhere and organizations that sort of tie Delmore County to the nation and the state?
Right. Well, the number could change by one or two. We've added a couple of committees, but I'm on roughly 21 different committees that are set up through the with the county that I'm appointed on, from the county. And I mentioned, like NORTEC, CSAC, RCRC, the NCRP, and I certainly couldn't name them all off in my memory. I don't have them in front of me, but there's goal committees, there's future facilities, we have a natural resources committee, we have Healthy Families Committee, and that's not the exact name of it, but there's they just go on, and that's where the time is spent, and I think that's where the progress is made. The board meetings are just putting the approval of what we do a lot of times on those other committees. That's the things that get brought forward, the issues that are within the community that need to be brought to the board's attention, and those are really important committees. I am the delegate for the rural counties, the RCRC committee. Chris Howard is our CSAC delegation, and those are two higher level, what I would call higher level committees, because you're dealing at the state level more, and a lot of expertise involved. They've got staff that are just absolutely amazing. They go through every bill that comes before the state legislature and federal. So they're looking at all these bills that impact rural counties, at least at the rural county level. The state does them that affect the entire state. So sometimes that's a little different dynamic when you're talking about the whole state, because of course the population is so much farther south, and California is really big on one size fits all type of a thing that doesn't work for us very well up here.
What are your feelings about that issue, about the relationship between Delaware County and Sacramento?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. You mentioned SB 54, and that to me is one of those one size fits all. That's something that wasn't necessary up here in our community. We never had an issue. In talking to the previous sheriff and our current Sheriff Apperson.
That's what struck me most about that debate, is that both Sheriff Wilson and Sheriff Apperson was like, this isn't an issue up here.
Exactly.
That's amazing to me.
Yeah. So why did we even need to go there? And I think you just stir all this up, and in this particular case, I think it was politically motivated. So I think that's unfortunate that they do things like that. But to put the county in jeopardy of possibly losing resources, or have to use resources in defending, either way.
Yeah.
I don't care. I shouldn't say I don't care. Regardless of what side you're on, there's probably no winning. So why get into a battle that there really is no winning? It's not a win-win. I mean, I enjoy most of these. We talked about committees and the things that I'm on. I always look for win-win. What can we do so that everybody comes out of this with a win? And to me, the county ends up winning if we do that. So, that's always been my focus. That's where I've always come from, is trying to get things, get a balance to where everybody comes out on top. We don't need to have losers.
What are your thoughts on the latest push to get the SB 54 thing back on the agenda, and maybe asking the county to file an amicus brief? Do we need to make a stand?
I don't think we need to make a stand. I know that doesn't make some people happy. We've basically fought for our freedoms, and these people are coming and encroaching on what we've got. But if you look at the other side of it, what is it that what's the goal? What's the goal? Are we going to go out and try to round all these illegal immigrants up? I know it's probably not very popular, but to me, I don't even know how you would start that process.
Yeah.
Are you going to get warrants? How are you going to get warrants for something that you have no idea what's out there? So I think to use resources to do that type of thing, and I think it's just not going to work. But the criminal element, I know everybody's concerned about the criminal element. Well, the criminal element, in my mind, is going to get dealt with,
and has always been dealt with, and that's kind of exactly.
So I don't know why all this controversy is taking place, and I want to be on the right side of it. I just don't know what that is. I guess.
What's your stand? What's your personal feeling about SB 54 in general?
My personal feeling of SB 54 in general is that it's one of those things that the governor or whoever pushed this bill is a one-size-fits-all. They didn't do enough research on it before they did this in areas where there is no impact. I think if they have a problem in an area, they should address it in that area. Fix that problem. Don't fix problems that aren't there, and then get the community all riled up over something that has no impact.
Do you think it does California a disservice to sort of to stand up against the federal government like this and this sort of? I mean, is what's happening with the state and Washington kind of the same thing that's happened with the board? Are they making like a big it's a tempest in a teapot sort of
I think it's kind of getting into a personal war. You're not going to tell me what to do, and yes, I am going to tell you what to do, kind of a thing. And I don't know that it's productive. Where's the win? Who's going to win in the end? If the federal administration prevails, are they the winner and California is the loser? Or if California prevails, are they the winner and the federal government's the loser? We're all part of both of these governments, so we all end up being losers and we all end up being winners. I just can't see it. I just don't understand why people want to go there. And if there is an impact in your community, I understand you getting behind one side or the other. But in our community where there is no impact, that's, I just don't think that's a place to go, especially if it's going to potentially cost the county resources that we don't have, and there's no impact. I don't understand the push for it.
Yeah, good point. It seems like the art of the compromise is kind of central to your supervisorial tenure.
Well, I don't want to make it seem like I back down.
Well, no,
because that's not my position. But in all things, and I do make my case. I fight hard for my side, but I also realize that I've been in positions where I've lost the entire argument when I could have won a significant portion of it if I would have just backed down a little bit. So I think completely losing and partially winning gets back to the whole win-win thing. So so there are times when you want to focus on the things that you can agree on and move forward with those things, and then deal with those issues that are real controversial on a different level.
This begs a kind of a larger question that I asked Chris, and I kind of want to ask everybody in an elected office. Then there seem to be two sorts of ways to be in an office. One is to, you stand for something, the people know what you stand for, and they elect you to go stand for those things on the board. The other is that you are elected to represent your constituency. And I think probably, and I don't know this, but probably being on a board, being in a situation like that, it's kind of a compromise between those two places. Which are you? Do you lean one way or the other? Are you there to represent yourself because you're right, or are you there to represent your constituency?
Well, I'm always right. No, and I say that facetiously. I don't. I think it's a combination. You know, I do the things that I feel that are right. You know, if I don't have a sense from my constituents, but you know, for the most part, I think we have a good you know, a good communication path. I do think I represent my constituents well. You know, I lean just a little bit towards the conservative side, and that's generally my stance. But there are times when you have to come back well closer to the center, and you know, and deal with the issues at hand. But you know, it's kind of a judgment call. You know, I don't like to get into those situations where you're danged if you do and danged if you don't type of thing. You know, well, nobody likes to be in those positions. You know, you try to find a way to work those things out, or at least I do. You know, and I think the collaboration, the communication, working with groups to get things done, that's the only way you get anything. Now, you don't go out there and stand alone and beat your shoe on the desk and think that you're going to just because you're louder you're going to make things happen. That isn't the way it works. It may have worked at one time, but it isn't the way it works anymore. You got to build consensus. You got to get people on. You got to talk people into your side of the argument. You got to talk them into your you know, to working with you. Don't work against me.
Is that a frustrating stance? Because you're saying that it doesn't work that way anymore, but it seems like all around us, people are trying to make it that way, where you just say things, just repeat them loudly enough.
Yeah.
That seems like you're almost in the, maybe it's just because of the relative quietness of wanting to work with other people that you don't, you know, it is... that seems like you're putting yourself in a tough place to be on the side of reason.
Well, yeah, I was told when I very first got the job as supervisor, and I'd made a couple of points, and we were having a meeting, and the person looked at me and he says, you know, you're trying to use logic, and that never works.
Oh my God!
And I've always tried to use logic and reason. You know, like I say, it doesn't do you any good to make enemies and get people angered at you. You can make your points, you know, without creating a bunch of friction. You can have disagreements. You certainly probably have a different point of view on things than I do. That doesn't mean that we can't have a conversation or can't talk or even like each other. I mean, you know, I have friends that we don't share the same points of view, and we can get into arguments, but you know, we're still friends when we're all done, and you know, and both of us can come to it from a logical point of view, and you know, and it's not like I haven't been swayed to go one way or the other. I always like to leave an open mind. I like to hear both sides. I get a lot of these one-sided issues that come about. I get it from one side, and I can remember way back when I was first on the board, and a person came to me with a problem, and they told me, well, the county's making me do this, and I got to go over here and do that, and that person doesn't have to do it, and they never told me, and they keep changing this, and they keep changing that. So I went down to the department, and I said, what are you doing to this poor person? He can't get his stuff done because you keep changing, you keep moving the carrot, or you keep moving what he's got to do. The target keeps moving. He can't ever catch up. What's going on here? And so they, you know, explained to me and showed me the paperwork and said, well, all these things he's talking about are on the agreement that they had, and they're all listed right here. And he's, you know, this person was complaining about things that were there that he knew he had to do. Yeah. So that was the last time I ever took a one-sided story without getting both sides and finding out. And it's not that I was, you know, angry about it or anything, but I just, you know, I went in with the point of view that this person's right and that person's wrong, and that's not always the way it is. It's pretty important that you get the both sides, and that's where you make the determination of, you know, of where you go from there.
A while back, earlier this year, in the midst of all the cannabis thing that happened with Bob voting to not continue the ban and that being that window, and all of this happened, there were folks out there who were going, okay, so exactly where do you and Chris and Lori stand with legal recreational cannabis in Delnor County? And Bob was arguing that he was doing this in order to get you to stand up and to make a statement. Was that necessary? This is a multi-parted question. So was that necessary to do? Is that something that you felt you needed to do? I mean, people, I think, were maybe afraid that you were letting the working group go on. You hadn't really been forthcoming with what your personal stance was, and then at the last minute, you're going to pull the rug out from under.
Well, that's really strange to me. I personally think it was wrong to do what he did. Mm-hmm. I don't think he had the best interest of the community in mind when he did it, because he shouldn't be worried about where my stance is on it. Was it the best thing to do for the county, for the mm-hmm. community? Mm-hmm. Is this the direction they wanted to go, to set us back a month or 2 months or whatever time it took us to then? Then these people went, there were people that went out and got permits from the state, which was certainly allowable because we no longer had a ban.
Yeah. So
people went out and got, or at least one person went out and got a permit to do the activities that were allowed by the state. Was that good for the community? Was that good for the person that went out and got the permits, and then we turn around and put a ban on it? Then his permits are no good. Mm-hmm. So was he looking at, did he want us to make a stand and say what our personal point of view was on recreational cannabis? Maybe. Was it a political move? Probably. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't what was best for the community. It was how could he make us look bad in front of the community
at the beginning of an election year.
I think most of this stuff that you're seeing now is politically motivated and not necessarily what's good for the community.
What is your stance on legal cannabis, and does that even matter?
At this point, I don't think it matters. I can tell you that I did not vote in favor of mm-hmm. legalizing cannabis, mm-hmm. And as I've said at the first forum that we were in, I've never smoked it, but I have inhaled, unlike mm-hmm. the president, Clinton,
the opposite.
Who smoked it and never inhaled. And I don't know how you can be around it without inhaling it. And I was at a lot of parties and have seen a lot of it, passed a lot of it around. I've touched it, but it's just not something that I was ever interested in. Do I think it's going to make the community better? Not necessarily. Mm-hmm. But do I think that we need to regulate it so that we can have these win-win situations where the people who voted for it are going to be allowed to do what they voted for? Mm-hmm. And are the people that voted against it not going to have to deal with the impacts that could possibly happen because of it?
Exactly, because the county is regulated.
So that's where I'm coming in from. I'm coming in from it from the standpoint of the community on how we, at this point, how do we deal with the impacts? Mm-hmm. And there are certain things that we're not going to have a lot of control over, like the ordinance that we just passed on the personal use part of it. Mm-hmm. Those are things that we can reasonably regulate, which I think we've done. And we're getting to that point, we've gotten to that point where we're going to be able to deal with that on a certain level. So now that's regulated. We've got that taken care of. Now we got to get into the commercial side of it, where the dispensaries, the cultivation, commercial cultivation. And my personal view is that I think we need to, if we are going to allow it, if the board decides that we are going to allow it, I think we need to have caps on the number of dispensaries. Mm-hmm. I think we need to have a cap on the number of cultivators that we have, mm-hmm. because I think those impacts, and especially in my district, which was about a 50-50 deal. 50 people voted in favor.
Yours was the closest district.
It was
right?
the closest. Yeah. It was the closest. I have a pretty conservative district, mm-hmm. And so we were about 50-50. And so I think that we need to work with both sides of that argument, because there's there's a faction that wants to have it, and there's a faction that doesn't want to have it. So I want to try to make sure that we don't impact those people that don't want it, and the people that have voted for it, and the state has voted for it, so it's legal. How do we address that? There's an economic component. Do we want to make people have to go illegally go over the border to get it, or to go to Humboldt County to get it? They're going to get it. So I think
or get it illegally in Delnor County too.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and we need to deal with the black market component. So there's a lot of that. I think the people that are just dead set against it, that train has already left the station. It's going to happen. And do we want to be able to enforce regulation and control the black market to some degree? If we do that, we're going to have to allow it. I don't think we can bury our head in the sand and say, oh, it's just not going to happen. We're going to ban it, and that's going to be the end of it, and it's not going to happen in Delaware County, because that's not the case. It's not the case now. It wasn't the case before the law was passed. So it's just something we have to deal with. So we're going to have to make those regulations work for both sides.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Jerry, thank you very much. Is there anything you'd like to add? Anything we haven't touched upon or covered that you'd like to let our listeners hear?
Well, if I can make a little advertisement, I do have a town hall, I guess not a town hall, maybe a hot dog and pony show that I'm going to have, if you haven't seen it in the paper, on Sunday.
Oh, okay. No, I haven't seen it in the paper.
Out at the Lake Earl Grange.
Okay.
I'm going to have some people there. The sheriff is going to be there from 12 to 1, so he'll be able to answer questions, a lot of these questions on law enforcement, and maybe SB 54 if you want to talk about that. I'm going to have Carl Byerly and maybe some other Jeep, part of the Jeep group from the forest side of things. We're going to talk about, we can talk about travel management plan and those types of things. Patty Stanley has agreed to come from the airport. Susan Doherty is out of town, but Patty's just has agreed to come and is going to talk about maybe Contour Airlines and stuff that's going on out at the airport. Helen's going to talk about, Helen Ferguson is going to be there to talk about the Elk Share program. And I'm missing somebody, but we're going to have a lot of tables set up out there. We're going to have hot dogs for everyone, hopefully, that shows up, whether it's 2 people or 200 people. I don't know who's going to show up. But anyway, we'll have a bounce house. There's going to be pony rides, hopefully.
Oh, wow.
And kind of a petting zoo.
Oh, no
so
way.
Just a family thing. If you're around for Memorial Day weekend, it's something we can do from 11 to 3 on Sunday. So kind of looking forward to that. I'd love to see you out there, and would appreciate your vote. And I've gotten a lot of support, so I'm happy to announce that part of it.
Great. That's fantastic. Well, Jerry, thank you very much for coming in. I'm sorry we did not extend an invitation to you in the first 12 years you were on the board, but we'd love to have you back, and best of luck come the 5th of June.
I'd be happy to be here. So thanks for the invitation.
All right. Thank you. Jerry Hemmingsen, Supervisor District 4, Del Norte County. The election's coming up June the 5th. As I said, best of luck to Jerry. I believe, I don't know who it is, but one of your opponents is going to be on with Sam Strait this weekend. That's Conversations with Sam Sunday at 3. And last he had Jake Smith on next, so he's going to have somebody talking. So if you want to hear the other side, you want to hear everything that's wrong with this nice man who's into compromise, tune in there. Jerry Hemmingsen, thanks again. And I may swing out there and get a hot dog on Sunday. That's terrific. You're tuned to KFUG Community Radio, 101.1 FM, online, kfugradio.org. We'll be back with some music shortly.